I took on a case last summer that still baffles me. I was trying to rebuild my life after my divorce. It felt like diving into strange cases could spark something new. That's how I ended up in a worn-down apartment complex in a rough urban area. The paint was peeling, and the lights flickered non-stop. I thought maybe this job would bring me some clarity. I got a call from a client. She said odd things happened in her new apartment. Flickering lights and items moved around. I figured it was worth checking out. On my first night there, I heard a soft ticking sound, like something winding up. I told myself it was just old plumbing or something. I see now that I was fooling myself. The next week turned into a nightmare. I started seeing shadows in the hallways. Once, I thought I saw something dart around the corner. I brushed it off. But then I found stuff in my client's apartment that wasn't hers. Someone else had been there, but I had no clue who. One evening I returned to investigate more. I pressed my hand against a wall that felt different. To my surprise, it gave way and revealed a hidden room. I couldn't believe my eyes. Inside were old artifacts and creepy photographs of people who lived there over the years. The eyes in those pictures seemed to follow me. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. I don't know how long I stood there. My heart raced, and the room felt suffocating. Was someone watching me? I tried to rationalize what I saw. Maybe it was a prank, but the weird occurrences just kept getting worse. On the night the ticking came back, it was louder. It felt like it was closing in on me, squeezing out the air. I thought I saw something move in the dark. Was it a shadow, or just my imagination? My mind spun. I stood still, feeling a mix of fear and confusion. Then I heard a whisper. It was faint, but chilling enough to send ice through my veins. I turned slowly, my heart pounding in my ears. I half expected to see someone, but the hallway was empty. I didn't know if I should feel relieved or terrified. I still think about that case, about what was real and what my mind made up. After all, who was keeping an eye on me when I thought I was the investigator? That nagging thought haunts me. I know I shouldn't have gotten involved, but the curiosity pulled me in deeper than I expected. As I left that night, I glanced back at the building. The lights flickered like a heartbeat. Something about that place had changed me. I realized I might not be alone in this building after all. The next day, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had to learn more about the apartment complex. I had my coffee, but it didn't bring me any comfort. I felt restless, like something important was just out of reach. I decided to visit the local library. Maybe old newspapers held clues to the building's history. The library was quiet. Dust hung in the air like a forgotten memory. I searched through musty archives and came across an article from 50 years ago. It detailed a tragic event in the very building where my client lived. A family had vanished without a trace, no explanation. The more I read, the heavier the air felt around me. I needed to find out more about that family. Were they still there somehow? My gut twisted at the thought. As I delved deeper, I found a name connected to the case, a woman named Clara. I made a note to track down any public records about her. That night, I returned to the complex, determined to confront whatever was there. The flickering lights greeted me like an eerie welcome. My client was home, waiting for me. She looked anxious. "You won't believe what happened while you were gone," she said, her eyes wide. I raised my eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "There was a knock at the door while I was watching TV," she replied. "I thought it was you." Her voice trembled, but when I opened it, no one was there. A chill ran down my spine. I glanced at the door, half expecting to see someone lurking on the other side. "Did you see anyone in the hallway?" I asked, my words edging on urgency. She shook her head. I could tell she felt it too, the oppressive weight of something unseen. "I also found something strange in my closet," she continued. "It's an old box. I didn't put it there." Immediately, I felt a mix of dread and curiosity. "Can I see it?" She nodded, leading me into her bedroom. As she pointed to the closet, I felt the air thicken. Inside was a weathered box covered in dust. I reached for it, my fingers trembling as I lifted the lid. Inside were old letters and photos, some torn and yellowed with age. The images showed the family who had once lived there, Clara and her children. My heart raced when I spotted a photo of a girl who looked remarkably like my client. I glanced at her, wondering if she noticed the resemblance. "Do you recognize anyone?" I asked cautiously. She leaned in, squinting at the images. Suddenly, her face blanched. "This girl. She looks like my sister," she whispered. Then everything went dark. The lights flickered out completely, leaving us in an unnatural silence. My heart thudded loudly in my chest as I fumbled for my phone. When I finally found it, I turned on the flashlight, illuminating the room. That's when I saw it. Something shifted in the shadowy corner, pale and fleeting. I felt the air grow colder, and panic washed over me. I wasn't just investigating a case anymore. I was part of it now, and whatever was in that darkness was not friendly. The darkness hung around us, a heavy blanket that smothered any sounds. My breath caught in my throat as I slowly turned the flashlight towards the corner. Shadows danced, and for a moment I could have sworn I saw a figure, faint and indistinct. I squinted, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. "Did you see that?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. My client stood frozen, her eyes wide and afraid. I don't know." I took a step forward, the beam of light cutting through the thick air. Nothing was there, just the wall and some old furniture. I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. My heart raced, and I couldn't tell if it was fear or adrenaline. "We need to get out of here," I said. Suddenly a loud bang echoed through the room. It wasn't our imagination. The noise came from the hallway outside, sharp and violent. It sounded like furniture being thrown around. "Stay by me," I instructed, trying to sound calm, though my voice trembled. We cautiously approached the door, the flashlight beams sweeping across the floor. I reached for the doorknob, but it felt cold against my skin. "Are you sure we should open it?" my client whispered, doubt creeping into her tone. "No," I admitted, "but we can't stay in here. We might not have a choice." I opened the door a crack and peered into the darkened hallway. The light from her apartment spilled out, but the hall seemed impenetrable. I didn't see anyone, but the darkness seemed to pulse, alive with unseen energy. "Let's go," I said, pushing the door wide open. We stepped into the hall, my flashlight flickering uncertainly. One step after another, we moved down the hallway. Each creak of the floorboards felt like a shout in the stillness. I kept scanning every corner. It felt like something was watching us, a cold, hungry presence that wanted to consume us. As we reached the end of the hall, I spotted something on the ground. My heart dropped. It was more letters, the same style as those from the box. They were scattered, as if someone had hurriedly tossed them aside. I bent down to gather them, my fingers shaking. "Maybe they'll tell us what's going on," I said, trying to stay optimistic. I flipped through them quickly, but they were mostly faded and worn. Then, one letter caught my attention. The date was recent, last month. It was addressed to my client. "Listen to this," I said, reading aloud. "I know you are here. They are waiting for you." My voice faltered as I finished. I felt a chill travel up my spine. I looked over at my client, who now wore an expression of sheer terror. "What does that mean?" she asked, her voice cracking. I hesitated, every instinct screaming at me to turn back. "I think someone, or something, wants you." Just then, the lights above us flickered to life again. The sudden brightness revealed the whole hall, but it also laid bare a figure standing at the far end, backlit and shadowy. I recognized that silhouette all too well. It was Clara. Before I could warn my client, Clara turned toward us. Her face twisted into a silent scream. I grabbed my client's arm and pulled her back, adrenaline coursing through my veins. We needed to leave, and fast. The figure in the hallway began to move toward us, gliding like a wisp of smoke. I felt the pull of something dark and ancient, and in that moment, I understood. We were not just witnesses to a mystery. We were right in the center of it. We sprinted back toward the apartment, but the weight of the past was closing in. Whatever had captured Clara long ago wanted to finish what it started, and it had set its sights on my client. We burst through the door, slamming it shut behind us. The heavy thud felt like a heartbeat. It echoed in the hollow silence. I turned the lock, my fingers fumbling with the cold metal. My client leaned against the wall, panting, her face pale. "What just happened?" she gasped, her eyes flicking to the door as if expecting Clara to come barreling through. "I don't know," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "But we can't stay here. We need to figure out what we're dealing with." The room around us felt different now, less of a sanctuary and more of a trap. I felt the letters in my hand, the weight of their words pressing on me. I spread them out on the table, searching for something I might have missed. Each faded line stared back, taunting me. One letter caught my eye once more. My heart raced as I read it again. "They are waiting for you." The message was chilling, as if the very walls were closing in, wanting to whisper secrets I wasn't ready to hear. "What are you looking for?" my client asked. She was shivering now, the earlier shock wearing off, replaced by cold fear. "Answers," I replied, even though it sounded weak. "Maybe we missed something." I collected the letters into a neat pile. Just then, I heard it again, a soft thud outside the door. I froze, looking at my client. Her eyes widened, and I could see the panic bubbling beneath her surface. Another thud followed, heavier this time. I approached the door, hands trembling. I pressed my ear against the wood, straining to hear. Silence lingered for a moment, then a whisper floated through the gap at the bottom. "Help me!" My stomach knotted. It wasn't Clara's voice, but it felt familiar, like someone I knew but couldn't place. I stepped back, but my client was already shaking her head, her face pale. "No, don't open it." "I have to see," I insisted, driven by some instinct I couldn't explain. I undid the lock, my breaths coming in short gasps. The door creaked as I opened it, revealing the darkened hallway once more. The air was thick, pressing against me. I stepped out cautiously, my flashlight beam slicing through the black. And that's when I saw it. An old photograph lying on the floor near the threshold. I picked it up, the paper cool against my skin. It depicted a group of people, faces smiling, but one face stood out. My stomach dropped. The woman in the middle was Clara. "She was here," I whispered, barely able to believe it. She must have known these people. But who were they? I flipped the picture over. There were names written on the back, one in particular standing out. Laura, written in elegant cursive. "Laura," I murmured, the name prickling at my memory. I glanced back at my client, who had followed me into the hallway. Her expression was curious, but laced with fear. "Who is that?" she asked, frowning. "I don't know," I confessed, but a creeping dread swirled in my chest. Something was off. Something deeper than just Clara's presence. Just then, the lights above us flickered again, plunging the hall into darkness. The air grew colder, and a familiar chill crawled down my spine. I held my breath, waiting for the figure to emerge, but nothing came. It was the silence that screamed the loudest, and I felt something shift behind me. Someone was in the house. I turned slowly, my heart pounding in my chest. The hallway stretched out like an endless corridor, shadows dancing just beyond the reach of my flashlight. I could feel my client's breath hitch behind me, a soft sound filled with terror. "Is someone there?" I called out, my voice shaky but louder than the silence. No answer came, just the weight of quiet pressing against my eardrums. I took a step back toward my client, gathering her courage. "Maybe it's just your imagination," she whispered, though her eyes were wide and darting. "Let's get out of here." I shook my head, stubbornly leaning into the darkness. I had to understand what was happening. The last thing I wanted was to leave this house without the truth. especially after seeing Clara's photo. "We need to find Laura," I murmured, half to myself. As I turned the flashlight back toward the hall, a flicker of movement caught my eye at the far end. I squinted into the dark. There, a shadowy figure flitted past the doorway. My blood ran cold. "Did you see that?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," she gasped. "We should go." Before I had a chance to object, she grabbed my arm, urgency pulling me toward the staircase. "I know this place holds answers, but it also feels like a trap," I said, fighting against her tug. We needed a plan. I scanned the hallway, trying to ignore the rising panic. A door on the far right, slightly ajar, beckoned me. The weak glow from my flashlight outlined the edges, an invitation or a warning. I had to know what was inside. "Wait," I said, breaking free from her grip. I moved toward the door, hesitant but determined. There was something in me that refused to back down. As I pushed it open, the hinges creaked loudly. Inside, I found a dusty room lined with shelves filled with old books and strange artifacts. Papers were strewn everywhere, as if someone had been searching frantically. I stepped further in, curiosity overtaking fear. In the center of the room was a large table, covered in more photographs, some of Clara, and others depicting different gatherings of people, their faces obscured by time, but their smiles still visible. Each one felt charged with energy, as if they were trying to tell me something. My client followed me in, breathing heavily. "This isn't a good idea," she said, glancing towards the door again. "Wait, I found something." I picked up a yellowed newspaper clipping that had caught my eye. The headline read, "Local woman Laura mysteriously disappears." My stomach dropped as I scanned the article. Details about Laura's life, her connections to Clara and this very house, leaped out at me. But just as I was about to show her, a loud crash erupted from somewhere deep within the house. The sound rattled the walls and sent both of us jumping back. "What was that?" she shouted. Panic trembled in her voice. "I don't know, but we need to—" Before I could finish, another shadow darted past the doorway, moving too quickly for me to focus on. I felt my pulse quicken, adrenaline coursing through my veins. "We need to leave now," my client urged. But as I stood there, clutching the newspaper, a chilling certainty washed over me. Whatever had happened to Laura connected to Clara, and now it was reaching for us too. I knew I had to confront the source of it all. Suddenly, a sharp whisper echoed through the room, and I realized it was calling my name. "Help me," it begged again. And just like that, the atmosphere shifted, heavy with impending dread. I felt the pull of whatever dark secrets were entangled in this house. Without thinking, I stepped toward the entrance, determined to discover the truth that lay beyond the shadows. As I stepped into the hallway, my heart thudded wildly. The shadows stretched out around me, impossibly long and thick. I flicked the flashlight beam to the right, half expecting to see the ghostly figure from before reappear. Instead, the space lay still, unsettlingly calm. "We should really go," my client insisted again. I could hear the tremor in her voice, but I couldn't turn back now, not when I was so close to uncovering the truth. I directed the beam to the far end of the hallway, where another door stood nearly closed. It looked almost like a portal to another reality. "Just one more door," I murmured. She hesitated but then nodded, her fear battling with my conviction. I reached for the knob and turned it slowly, the door swinging open with a low groan. The inside was dark, but I could make out the faint outlines of what seemed to be a living room. Dust motes swirling in the air, gently illuminated by my flashlight. Then there it was, a sudden movement, a flicker of something near the fireplace. I narrowed my eyes, straining to see. It was an old rocking chair, gently swaying as if someone had just left it. A chill rushed down my spine. "What is it?" my client whispered. I stepped forward, scanning the room. Just to the left, an old trunk lay partially open, its lid gaping wide. I carefully walked over, and as I knelt beside it, I caught a glimpse of fabric peeking out. My hands trembled as I pulled back the lid further. Inside, I found a faded quilt and something hard wrapped within it. Unwrapping it, I discovered an ornate box, intricately carved and sealed, shut with iron. My heart raced. I could feel the weight of its history, the stories trapped inside. Whatever it contained, it felt like it was tied to everything that had happened. The disappearances, the shadows, and even the whispers. "I think I've found something," I said, looking back at my client. Her eyes widened as she approached, though she kept glancing at the doorway. "We should still leave," she urged. But the tension inside me heightened. I gripped the box, a fierce desire to know what secrets it held. Just then, a sharp sound erupted from the hallway, a crashing noise that made my skin prickle. "What was that?" I gasped. Before she could answer, the lights flickered in the room. The shadows morphed, darkening the corners, and I felt the air grow colder. A foreboding feeling settled in my stomach. It was as if the house itself was coming alive around us, reacting to our presence. "No, we need to go now," my client insisted, pulling at my sleeve. She was practically pleading with me. But as I stood with the box in hand, I heard the whisper again, more insistent this time. "Help me." It felt like a plea from the walls themselves, echoing sorrow and desperation. I hesitated, torn between fear and the unbearable need to uncover the truth. Just then, with a force I couldn't see, the door slammed shut behind us. The sound resonated in my bones, sealing our fate within that room. What did we just do? I thought, panic rising. Desperation set in as the door rattled violently, and the shadows around us twisted. I knew we had opened something far worse than I had anticipated. And now, something was coming for us, something that wouldn't let us leave without answers. The door rattled again, and my heart raced. I turned to my client, her face pale as fear reflected in her eyes. "What do we do?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Break the door down," she suggested, but I could hear the doubt in her tone. We both knew the door wouldn't budge on its own. I took a step back, holding the box tightly with both hands. The air felt charged, like the moment right before a thunderstorm. I needed to understand what I'd found. There had to be a reason this box was sealed. Ignoring my client's urging, I examined the ornate carvings more closely. Symbols twisted and curled across its surface. Some I recognized from stories of the past, others felt foreign, even sinister. My flashlight flickered, casting erratic shadows across the room, and I fought the urge to look over my shoulder. Suddenly, the whispers grew louder, engulfing the space around us. "Help me! Help me!" It was a chorus of voices swirling together, pushing at my mind. I felt lightheaded, like I was teetering on the edge of some dark revelation. "The box. It wants to be opened," I murmured. But as soon as the words left my mouth, panic gripped me. "No, we can't. We shouldn't." Before I could make sense of my conflicting thoughts, the fireplace sparked to life, flames licking toward the ceiling. My client gasped, stepping back, but I couldn't tear my gaze away. The flickering light illuminated the faces of the past, shimmering in the flames, faces twisted in anguish that seemed to reach out, mouths forming silent screams. "Stop!" I yelled, clenching the box tighter as power surged through the room. The box trembled in my hands, almost vibrating as if it were alive. I closed my eyes, breathing deeply despite the chaos around us. "This is just fear. We can't let it control us," I told myself, but doubt gnawed at my resolve like a rabid animal. "Open it, please." My client's voice sliced through my focus. "What if it can help us?" I swung my flashlight back to her, face drenched in shadow and light, a mixture of desperation and desperation. The urge to open the box warred with the instinct to survive. "What if it makes things worse?" I countered, hoping to reach her through the haze of panic. The box shook violently in my grip, almost falling from my hands. In that instant, I made a decision. We need to know. I felt the weight of every minute that had led us here. This place steeped in sadness and lost souls. And I understood the truth was in that box. "Stand back!" I shouted as I jammed my thumb against the iron clasp. With a loud click, it released, and I flung the lid open. A blinding flash erupted as a pulse of energy swept through the room. I stumbled back as the noise engulfed me, a cacophony of voices and laughter, of sorrow and pleading. As I tried to shield my eyes, a figure emerged before me, partially formed from the light. It was a woman, her face etched with deep lines of heartbreak. She held out her hand toward me, her expression shifting from desperation to urgency. "Help me," she breathed, and then everything went dark. I jolted awake, gasping for air. The room was dim, but I could make out the flickering flames of the fireplace still crackling nearby. My heart raced, lurching against my ribs as the memories flooded back. "What was that?" I murmured to myself, turning to check on my client. She was still there, eyes wide in disbelief, her body rigid. "What just happened?" she asked, her voice quaking. I opened my mouth to respond, but nothing came out. I felt numb, disoriented by the vision of that woman. "Did you see her?" I finally managed. "The woman in the light?" "Yes," she said slowly, her hand fidgeting with a strand of hair. "Who was she? What did she want?" But I didn't have answers. I looked down at the box, still open and seemingly ordinary now, its carvings dull and unthreatening in the glow of the firelight. Something went wrong when I opened it. We might have released something. My insides churned at the thought. I should have listened to my instincts. A chill swept through the room, and I could feel it, something watching us from the shadows. The air thickened, wrapping around me like a heavy fog. "Was it really just a vision?" my client asked, tension radiating from her. I shook my head. "I don't know." But I felt the whispers start again, threading through the silence like a sinister song. "Help me," echoed in my mind, followed by the flicker of the woman's pained face. "Let's get out of here," my client insisted, her voice edged with panic. We both stood up, the urge to run clawing at me. Yet something told me that we couldn't leave without understanding what was happening. I looked back at the box one last time before taking a cautious step toward the door. I cracked it open, peeking outside. The hallway was empty, but the oppressive atmosphere felt alive, like being backed into a corner by the unknown. "Wait," I said, pulling back. "I need to know if we're in danger, if that woman was a warning." As I stood there, trying to gather my thoughts, a soft, shuffling sound broke through the silence, drawing my attention to the dark walls surrounding us. I knew I wasn't alone. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, my voice barely a breath. My client nodded, eyes wide. What should we do? I felt helpless, stuck between the fear of something lurking in the darkness and the need to learn more. We can't let fear drive us. Maybe we can find out who she was. Just then, I noticed something else. Not just whispers, but a shadow moving just beyond the flickering light. Someone was in the house. "Get behind me," I ordered, stepping forward. The old floorboards creaked under my weight, the sound echoing into the hall. I could feel the weight of unseen eyes on me, waiting. "What if it's dangerous?" my client asked, her voice trembling. "I don't know," I admitted, my heart pounding in tandem with the rising urgency. I took a deep breath and stepped fully out of the doorway, ready to confront whatever dark force awaited us. I stepped into the hallway, my instincts screaming at me to turn back. The flicker of light from the fireplace barely illuminated the long corridor ahead, casting distorted shapes on the walls. My heart pounded louder than the creaking floorboards beneath my feet. "Stay close," I urged, glancing back at my client. She followed, barely a step behind me, breathing heavily. I found myself staring at the door at the end of the hall, its surface marred and worn. It seemed to pulse with energy, almost as if it were alive. It stood ajar, a sliver of darkness beckoning. The whispers grew louder, filling the air, pushing against my resolve. "Please help me," The voice was clear now. I wasn't imagining it. It was real, and it was coming from behind that door. I touched the cold handle, hesitating for a moment. "What if it's a trap?" my client whispered, anxiety lacing her words. "Then we'll deal with it," I replied, unwilling to let fear paralyze us. I jiggled the handle and pushed the door open. The room beyond was shrouded in shadow, but as I stepped inside, the air shifts. It felt heavier here, as if the room was holding its breath. The dim light from behind us barely reached the corners, and I squinted, trying to make out any shapes within the gloom. That's when I saw it, a jagged mirror hanging crookedly on the wall, the glass cracked in several places. It reflected little light and distorted everything that flickered within its frame. I felt drawn to it, despite the innate warning flaring in my gut. Just then, my client gasped. "There's something written on the wall!" I turned my attention to the opposite wall and saw faded, hurried scrawls that looked almost like a plea, erratic and chaotic. "She came to me," it read, "but I couldn't help her." My breath caught. Could this be about the woman from my vision? But then another thought sent a cold rush of fear down my spine. Had someone else experienced this? The uncertainty hugged my chest tightly. "Maybe we should leave," my client said, shifting nervously as she scanned the room. "I don't like this." "We can't leave just yet," I insisted, a spark of determination igniting within me. "We need to know what happened." As if in response, the mirror rippled, sending a jolt through the air. I stepped closer, entranced. The whispers turned frantic, swirling around us like a storm. Suddenly, the face of the woman appeared in the glass, her expression pleading as she extended her hand toward me. "Help." Before I could move, the lights flickered and then burst out, plunging us into darkness. My heart raced, every instinct urging me to run. But I stood frozen, gripped by terror and the image of her outstretched hand. Then I heard it, a low, sinister laugh echoing from the darkness beyond. "Who are you?" I called out, the tremor in my voice unmistakable. No answer came, just an unsettling silence. Something shifted behind me, and I knew the danger was no longer just a presence. I could feel the weight of it now. This was only the beginning. In that darkness, I felt for my client, my hands reaching blindly until I found her arm. "We need to get out," I urged, keeping my voice low. The laughter hung in the air like smoke, with shadows that blurred reality itself. With trembling fingers, I fumbled for the door we'd just entered. But as I stepped back, that same chilling whisper pierced through the silence again. "Help me." It echoed off the walls, growing frantic, as though it were clawing its way toward us. I instinctively pressed my back against the door, pushing it closed, but the weight of something unseen kept it ajar, refusing to let us escape. "I can't stay here," my client gasped, panic lacing her words. "What if it's not just her?" My mind raced. Clara had connected to the family's disappearance somehow, and now Laura's name danced on my lips like an incantation. Were we just visitors in a long-standing tragedy? Would we become part of it? In that moment, I had a fleeting urge to act. Something deep within me stirred, urging me to confront whatever haunted these walls head-on. "All right," I whispered, letting go of the door. "We're going to face this. We need answers." I turned my flashlight toward the left side of the room, where the mirror hung limply, reflecting our fear. The moment the light hit the cracked surface, the glass rippled like water, hinting at a hidden reality beneath. A part of me wanted to look away, but I found myself mesmerized, drawn to the tumult of emotions flickering in the distorted glass. "Don't," my client implored, gripping my arm tightly. "You don't know what might happen." But my thoughts aligned with the whispers, faint and pleading. We had already broken open our chances of escape. Now we just needed to find a way to understand. "You're right, I don't know," I replied, heart racing. "But I need to try." With a deep breath, I stepped toward the mirror, inching closer until my face nearly touched its cracked surface. The air felt charged, quivering with tension. I caught a glimpse of the woman again, her eyes wide with a burning desire to be seen. "Help," she whispered. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice breaking the barrier between us. "What happened?" As if responding to my call, the room swayed, the atmosphere shifting. The cracks in the mirror shimmered, and an echoing voice broke through, laced with sorrow. "I was lost," it murmured, the words heavy with time. "Clara took them. To save us." My heart raced at the implications. Clara hadn't just been a victim. She'd been part of something deeper. That connection swallowed my thoughts whole. Just then, a sharp clang sounded from outside the room, followed by footsteps rushing along the hallway. I felt my resolve waver. Fear clawed at my chest. "What was that?" my client gasped, peering around me. "I don't know." The laughter rose again, menacing and close. I glanced back at the mirror. What if Clara had been trying to warn us? But the more I focused, the more distorted the room became. In a surge of desperation, I reached for the mirror, wanting to break its hold. "Tell me what you need," I shouted, feeling the pressure of unseen forces mounting. And in that instant, the mirror shattered. Fragments exploded outward, and with them came a deafening silence, leaving us panting, astounded amidst the scattered shards, reflecting scattered glimmers of light. "Now what?" my client whispered, shaking. I looked around and realized the overall pressure around us had lifted, if only slightly. In the scattering of glass, a glow emerged. An ethereal light began to form, twisting its way toward the center of the room, revealing another doorway hidden behind the shards. "Look," I pointed. My client and I took a slow step toward it, our caution mixed with a surreal sense of hope. The tendrils of light beckoned us, but when I reached out, something tugged at my consciousness. It was Clara, her presence lingering longer than I'd expected. Was she trapped here eternally, or had that confrontation with the darkness unshackled her spirit? "Whatever you are, Clara, we will find a way to help," I whispered, trying to reassure myself and her. I looked at my client, her expression a mix of apprehension and determination. "Are you ready?" I asked, the light within the doorway pulsating as if in response. Slowly, she nodded. As we stepped through the threshold, the air shifted beneath us, transporting us away from the oppressive shadows of the past. But as the echo of Clara's watchful eyes faded from our minds, a quiet question remained. Would we ever truly be free of her story? Behind us, the remnants of the mirror glittered like fallen stars, and a sense of unresolved questions lingered in the air. Perhaps we had escaped the darkness, but we carried its mysteries within us, intertwined with our own stories. I may never discover the full truth behind Clara, Laura, and the others trapped within those walls. In the end, I knew the haunting whispers would follow me. And I still think about that case, about what lay behind the darkness and the vision of a woman forever lost to time.